Dear Elena, thank you so much for the invitation and for the excellent coordination. I want to also thank Mr. Stanislav. He's not around, but he did an excellent job. And my dear translator, she's wonderful. She brought me yesterday from the airport late, and I was hungry. She ordered me a great salad. So thank you for that. I am so humbled and honored to be in Russia, because Russia for me is not a country. Russia for me is a great nation. It's a place where you learn, you're inspired, and you are educated. This is the place, the land of philosophy, of art, of music, of architecture. So I am so grateful for your invitation. As you saw in my intervention in the previous session, I'm so much interested in going beyond the tools. I believe in critical thinking, in the importance of local knowledge, and also in the notion of creativity. And therefore, I divided my presentation into two main parts. One part where I'm gonna tackle what I called it the post condition, what would happen after. Because I think we need to all the time to learn from history, to learn from the past, to consider better decisions in the present, and also to envision the future. And in my second part, I would create a sort of a narrative related to a project that I was supervising in Doha, Qatar, to show how we implement all of these tools, to come up with a project that used the most advanced tools in terms of BIM and artificial intelligence, so on, but at the same time, it's so human-centered. It's talking to the people. So the post condition, and I want to start by the notion of post terminology, because also the West is playing a very interesting game with us. All the time they talk about the issue of how we envision the cities of the future or future cities. And this is a distinction that I want to also stress in our session today. To me, future city is more suggesting a science fiction approach, a Hollywood approach to the city, where you will chase only an image. As opposed to when you talk about the future of cities, you acknowledge that the city is like a story, and you are building a new chapter in the history of the city. They also play a very interesting game with us. They keep on labeling cities: sustainable city, green city, smart city, resilient city, and so on and so forth. And whenever we start to understand what exactly they mean by that, they move to another terminology, right? And again, because of lack of critical thinking, we surrender to all of this. Finally, they're talking about 15-minute city as if it's an invention. All Russian cities, and I've been to some of them, they were compacted. There was so much related to the notion of walkability and how to bring people together. But this is the beauty of magic, the magic of marketing. Marketing is about how to play with words. So you look at the human disaster that you are having here, but yet they would call it green skyscrapers, green automobiles, green waste management, and so on and so forth. We had also a very interesting lesson, but we started to gradually forget about it. And I called it the post-COVID, because COVID, in my opinion, was an interesting platform to learn more about the tools and the technology and the society and the community. We did learn that some people can afford to be protected, but not the whole community. Because other parts of the community, they have to go and to work even during the blockade, because working on a daily basis is the only way for them to put food on the table. Some cities can afford lockdown, and some cities were puzzled with people moving around again for economic reasons. And in some situations, we saw that a single blurred barrier is dividing marginalized poor communities versus sophisticated privileged communities. And those people who are in the marginalized communities were responsible for bringing food and coffees and everything to the people enjoying the lockdown. So to me, what was interesting about COVID is that alerted us to the notion of just cities, fair cities, cities for all. And also, particularly from my region, oil and gas is the backbone of the economy. So how also to understand that the post-oil paradigm is coming? You cannot rely only on oil and gas as the economical base of your country. This is a picture of the very first solar-powered plane that took a tour around the world without a single drop of oil. They started from Abu Dhabi, which is a Gulf capital, going to Muscat, Oman, which is another Gulf capital, and it was like a big red flag that the post-oil paradigm is not coming. We are living the post-oil paradigm. So what kind of decisions that you should do regarding the built environment knowing that? Climate change is also something that we need to address in all our construction and building and design process. And it's not a fallacy anymore. It's becoming real, and we saw evidences around the world suggesting that. A beautiful book called The World Without Us. And the cover of the book is suggesting the whole story. How the world was so green, lush forests and so on. And then with our interventions, we started to transform it gradually into a gray world packed with concrete jungles and so on. The idea also of how to look at the notion of city reconstruction and how to invest wisely. Those are examples of country that shows in the Middle East, show the contradiction between how you invest in creating towers and iconic real estate development, but at the same time, like in Morocco when they were subjected to an earthquake, or Libya when they were subjected to a flood, or the discrepancy between rich and poor in a place like Egypt. So all of this also is putting a lot of responsibility on our shoulders. And hence, innovation is fundamentally important. Creativity is fundamentally important. And this would lead me to a question that is also so relevant to the Russian context here. In the Middle East, do we only copy and paste from the past, from the West, or it's also our responsibility to have our own creative intervention to the extent that maybe we can reach a situation where the West will learn from Russia like that they learned before, or the West can learn from the Middle East like they did before. So this is the Gulf region. If you're not aware of it, particularly those 6 countries are forming the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and Qatar right in the middle, this tiny peninsula. This is the origin of Doha. It was basically a fisherman village, very humble built environment. They were relying on fishing and pearl diving, very, very tough jobs. And then suddenly they discovered oil. This black thing that they can sell it and get incredible amount of money, unprecedented oil revenues. And you see the traces of modernism started to come with the cars and some modern buildings. And they used the money to do jungle of skyscrapers. And why they did that? Because they want to look like New York. They want to look like Shanghai. They want to imitate the global Western models, and they totally forget about their history. Look at the pace of development in 70 years. This is the origin of Doha in 1937, and this is exactly the small square that you will see it, and all of the rest is this urban sprawl that took place in the last 60, 70 years. And in the process of doing that, they totally forget about their heritage and about the old chapters of the city. Not only that, they were destroying it. And they were happy about that because those are old chapters of their history that are reminding them of poverty and the tough time. So the project we started to do was how to revitalize the old heart of the city, how to bring people back to the place where it was totally demolished. And the very first approach to that was related to the notion of holistic revitalization. To use the state-of-the-art technical tools, including BIM, Revit, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. But more importantly, what are the different human factors that we can understand from studying the context to come up with better decisions? So to do that, and radically different than any other investment project, we started by a research journey. Anthropologist, sociologist, economist, urbanist, urban transportation, we formed a team to answer all the questions regarding how to build a project in the future using state-of-the-art tools, but at the same time speaking to humanity. One important conceptual base was how to move from car-based urbanism, fragmented, scattered urbanism, to go back to the origin of the city as a compacted place. So you don't have to go between the different parts of the city using your Land Cruiser. But if you bring elements together, people would walk, and the social connections between people would be much better. You use BIM and you use artificial intelligence to revisit the old vocabulary of the city. You can learn from windows, from doors, from structural elements, from materials, from ornamentations. But those unique tools would help you to bring it back in a more creative and innovative manner. Even the urban fabric. You understand old urban fabric, but you revisit it in an interesting manner. And when you look at the different components of the project, you see also that interesting tools were used, but all of them are inspired from lessons that we have learned from the past. So open spaces and public spaces, for instance, how to create places for people. And again, BIM and artificial intelligence help us to create very interesting, cozy environment because sometimes the temperature is incredibly harsh. So how you create places where people can get together in events and activities and so on. And the notion of walkability is becoming really important. So you create the positive environment that will bring people together to walk and enjoy places. And even when it comes to sacred activities that people used to do. Local squares also that connected to residential areas so families and kids can have a wonderful time. Instead of creating highways, and that was also a wonderful discussion also using artificial intelligence and BIM with urban transportation engineers, how to move from the highways paradigm to the streets. Because the streets talk to people. And at the same time, because of the architectural language, it's a very, very dramatic and very static kind of environment. Courtyards are also important. So we do a lot of sketching and a lot of understanding. But again, the new contemporary tools are helping us to come up with much, much better results. The edges of the building, again, because of the harsh climate, how the edges of the building are helping us. And then once again, the tools helped us to reconstruct the old buildings. Some of them were preserved and conserved, and they're used to have some museums, some community facilities that the whole community is excited about and using it on a temporary basis. Walkability, as I said before, even the element of landscape, we were able to, using artificial intelligence, to understand what are the local materials with minimum consumption of water that can be implemented here. And not only landscape for beautification, but productive landscape, which we call it urban agriculture. So some of the local restaurants here, they have their own gardens where they can get fresh tomatoes and so on and use it in their restaurants. I want to end up with this image because to me this image is telling the whole story. This sort of the dialogue between the skyline of the city when we were only imitating the West versus the maturity of critical thinking and creativity and innovation and making sure that we are using the contemporary tools, then artificial intelligence, but more importantly, the local knowledge and innovation and creativity. And thank you so much for having me.